All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-hosts, Maddie B. and Rick David. The Skype update is still being weird, so we'll probably see a new visual thing, or at least change in the coming weeks. I'm very small in the bottom right, and then you have Rick and Matt. Rick's on the left and Matt's on the right if you're watching the video screen. Hopefully the audio has still been good. We've been trying to do some updates and stuff. But enough of that technical crap. Let's get into high tempo. I'm going to kick it off today, guys. I don't want to make this an extra topic yet, but I sent you guys the preliminary investigation into the college basketball world by the FBI. So they're getting ready for court, and they started to call out for jurors. And they listed, because you know, if you've ever been summoned into court duty, and even if you haven't, you've probably heard that they give you a list of questions to disqualify you. And if you had any connection to these schools, you were disqualified. Basically letting everyone know that these are the schools that are under investigation, at least at the very beginning. And the list has Arizona, Louisville, NC State, Miami, LSU, Oregon, DePaul, Creighton, if I said that right, Texas, Oklahoma State, and USC. And then just some notes that are out there. He thinks, the attorney thinks that Oregon was the Nike school to offer a substantial amount of money to Bruce Bowen, who was the basketball player that signed with Louisville, and I think basically undid their program. And he's also trying to connect. There were two other guys, DeSouza. He signed with Maryland. Or no, he was going to sign with Maryland. They offered him money. There's a money trail for that. But he ended up at Kansas. And then Nasir Little was going to sign at Arizona. They offered him $150,000. But he ended up at University of North Carolina. And they're trying to prove that Nike was the other company that was outbidding them. Or maybe that one was Under Armour. I think the Maryland guy was Under Armour. So they're trying to connect these three big merchandise or apparel companies, if that's what they're considered, sportswear. And until we get the details, not going to make it a main topic, but I did want to bring it up, so that's my high tempo for this week, that it is underway, because we talked about this back in March, during March Madness, whenever the story originally broke, and most people probably forgot about it, but it is underway, so you're going to be hearing a lot more, and more dirt's coming out. And on that same note, there was that investigation into Laramie Tunzel. I'm going to put out on Twitter. There's a good documentary on that, Foul Play, that just shows that it isn't just college basketball. Football has some shady stuff going on as well. So keep an eye out for that. Matt, what do you got for high tempo this week?
Just dogs continue to roll. We had another game, pulled out the big victory, so that pushes our record to 5-1 undefeated in the month of September, rolling into October here, where hopefully we get ready for a playoff push.
Very cool. Congrats. Huge winning streak for you guys. So hopefully that continues. Rick, what do you got this week?
It's that time of the year where we start firing major league managers. So if your name is Mike Scioscia, Jeff Bannister, John Gibbons, and also Paul Muller, the Hall of Famer, you are unemployed at this time. So start firing some managers. So it's that time frame. Pitching coach for Seattle, Mel Stottlemyre Jr. out of his job. Jeff Branson out of the Pirates job. I know we'll talk about more of that later, but it's that time of the year where if you underachieved, you may be gone and on the hot seat. So fun times to watch here what's going to happen. And also we have the wild card playing games going on as we speak. So,
well, Rick, I was going to ask you about that. What do you think in the NL about the two tiebreaker games?
Had to be played. I mean, it stinks for
Did they have to be played?
Yes.
Why?
For home field.
Yes, but I'm asking, why don't they have a tiebreaker scenario? Those teams played how many games against each other? Why don't they go with head-to-head?
You could go with head-to-head, but that's not how the MLB union and everything has everything written out and everything. So there are agreements and everything. It's written for the game 163. So, I mean, I agree with it in a way. I'd rather see 163. I mean, head-to-head, okay, where are you going to look? Okay, we're going to look at the Cubs, and we're going to look at them, and we're going to look at okay, they played the Pirates. Cubs beat the Pirates more, so that's why.
No, I'm saying head to head against each other.
What if that's even? Then you have to look at interdivision games.
Yeah, then you go to interdivision, you go right down the line. Because right now you're looking at the Atlanta Braves. They're the only team in the NL that has their pitching staff in order, ready for the playoffs. Dodgers are back a game, and who won the other game? Brewers. Brewers are back a game.
Brewers.
So the Cubs are back too, and the Rockies are back too, because they have to play the play-in. So even if they win, you're still going to be back a man in rotation. They're going to be on their third pitcher whenever those division games kick off.
Yeah, but it also, who says rest is going to prove that you're good? You still have to set your 25-man roster, and you have to set it right. I mean, you can mess up and pick the wrong guys or have a reliever who stinks and bring them in, and so I see your point, and I don't see your point. I'd rather have home field advantage. I'd rather play at home more games. Yeah, is it better? Congratulations to Atlanta. Yeah, congrats to Atlanta, but they also prove one other thing. The NL East was a stinky division overall. Mets stunk, Marlins stunk, Nationals majorly underachieved. I mean, they were your World Series. How many people picked them? How many ESPN broadcasters are like, oh, Nationals are going to win? Yeah, they stunk. So, I think it proved one thing. Braves played a weaker teams, and I think these teams that played in got what they needed. The Brewers have been on fire lately. They've been hitting the ball crazy. You look at Christian Yelich. He wasn't even in the MVP discussion a month and a half ago. Now he's in it, and he has a chance to win. It's either him or Baez. I'm hoping Baez won it because Baez has been a better player all year, where Yelich has had ups and downs. But I would rather be – you could say you have the Braves don't have a good pitching staff anyway. And some of these teams pitched their 3 and 4 guys in the play-in game because they knew they were going to that wild card play-in possibly. Look at Cubs. They're pitching Lester. I would say Lester's are 1. So they're pitching their 1 today, So I think it's better for the game. It brings more fans to the game. The games yesterday, I wish they were at different times. That's the only bad part. They played at 1 and 4. Most people are working on Mondays at 1 and 4. But they had to give time for the teams to take off, like Colorado, to get to their third city in 3 days. So, but I understand it that way. So maybe next year they could end it. I know the Major League schedule, there's going to be more off days next year. But one thing they should consider is ending the season on a Saturday. In case you need to go to 163, it could be on a Sunday where there's more people off, and you could play those games at different times. Because this playoff schedule was set in, beginning of September? Where all the games laid out and everything?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just saying, I think you strengthened my point, though, because the Braves division were so bad, and they only won 90 games. Why did they get the reward of an extra day of rest when the Cubs, who advanced? The Brewers and whoever the other team was.
Dodgers beat Rockies.
Dodgers, they both had 95-plus wins, didn't they? So you're rewarding the Braves in a weak division, have the least amount of wins out of any of the teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, but you could have won a game during a year. You're telling me the Cubs couldn't have beat the Pirates one more time or the Reds one more time? Really? That's not
very
a good
true.
Argument because the NL had bad teams, and then you go over to the Dodgers and you go over to them and the Rockies. They should have beat the Padres more. Padres were bad. You could say, yes, one of the players outside of Yelich who had a great second, last month, was Hunter Renfroe. But, outside of that, name 4 Padres players on their 40-man roster. You guys are not even going to come up with 4, and I'm going to give you one with Hunter Renfroe. But that just shows you how bad that team is.
Well, I'm definitely not going to try to guess Padres. Matt, you have anything you want to add on the playoff debate after hearing both sides?
I don't really. I see both sides. Cards aren't in. Bucks aren't in. I'm not in. Move on. .org.
Good take. Speaking of, going to keep the playoff theme, I guess, going into the mailbag here. After, of course, Penn State loses, which we're going to get into later in the show after we go through Steel City Update and the Steelers and stuff. There was a lot of debate about Penn State fans and an 8-game playoff. So I'm on Twitter trying to explain to Penn State fans that the 8-game playoff isn't good. So the question was, do we need to move to an 8-team playoff? And my answer, and I'll just give it right now, is no, we need to go directly to 16. And I'll let you guys give yours before I give my in-depth reasoning. So, Matt, we'll stick with you. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think 16 is probably the better route to go. I mean, I know that you want to look at your Power Fives and then you have a couple at-large bids pushing it to 8. But I think we've had this debate before. No matter how many teams you push it to, there's still going to be a handful of teams that are going to be on the bubble saying, well, why not me? And you look at the bowl games, there's however many bowl games now per year where the majority of Division I teams are going, and there's still a handful that are still like, well, why are they going to a bowl and not my team? So I think it's any way you split it, there's arguments on either side. To me, I think 16 gives you more than enough wiggle room that it would allow, the Alabama-Georgia scenario, or within the last couple of years when Clemson and Florida State were in the same division in the Atlantic, it allows for some of those teams that you can put two quality opponents that might make a playoff push if it weren't for that other team in their conference. It makes things a little bit more interesting.
Rick, what are your thoughts?
I say keep it at 4, but I say change your voting process. The only people that should have votes are Division I football coaches. Every one of those coaches deserves 4 picks. You put the 4 teams that have the most picks are in. I mean, here's the thing, because when you go to conference presidents and college presidents, they're going to vote for their team or their friends' teams or anything. I feel with at least going with all the coaches, the bias will be all over the board. There's not going to be as much bias because they'll be biased, but it'll be so spread out so far. It'll be tough to group or different things along those lines. And who watches the games, really? Who watches these games in depth? It's the college coaches. I mean, give every team 4 votes who they think should be in, and period. And end the story. I mean, that's the problem. Because there's been divisions left out, there's been conferences left out. Everybody, you got 4 votes. So we don't have to hear, University of Central Florida last year had no losses. Where were they kept out? Well, you were kept out because other coaches watched your games and were fans of you. They didn't think you were a top 4 team. Okay, that's why you didn't get in. Not because, a bunch of college, random people got together in a room of 20 and they voted who they wanted. No. Okay, we have whatever. How many Division I football teams are there anymore?
100 something. 120.
Is it 120?
I think it used to be 100.
110, 120 was popping in my head, then 70 popped in my head. I think it's in the 120s.
It's definitely over 100, but...
Yeah, now it'll be like, okay, well, UCF, you only got 20 votes for the top 4, so 100 teams didn't think you were that good. That's what happened. So, I mean, I would rather have something like that. You expand it more, here's what's going to happen. We already see it happening. The Christian McCaffreys of the world are going to say, I'm out, see you later. I'm going to go train in Bradenton, Florida, or Lake Placid, or somewhere else. One of these Olympic facilities where I could go hang out. Bradenton, Florida has the IMG Academy. I mean, I'm going to go train there. See you later. My team's done. My scholarship's out. The semester's over. Peace out. Done. That's what's going to happen. Because if I'm let's say I'm a big time defensive end and I have a 16-game playoff, okay, that's 4 chances for me to get hurt. Or 4 chances for me to stink up the joint. I get no sacks, no tackles. Everybody's seeing me on the stage. And I look like I'm an embarrassment. And my team gets walloped, 48-7, and I look like I'm terrible. And now I'm getting drafted in the 3rd round. No way. I'd rather take Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to go train at the IMG Academy.
That kind of went off the rails there at the end, but I'm going to take some of your points and add to them. I think you're right. The bowl games, they're going to be done. If you look across the landscape of college football, they're under such scrutiny right now just last week, the Maryland death, that hit the news again as they started to release some of their findings, which I'm waiting on till probably next week till those are all out. Then you had a player with a collapsed lung. You had the guy from, I think it was Tennessee State, who collapsed and is in critical condition. And while he's in the hospital, Tennessee State tries to create a GoFundMe to raise money for him. The NCAA takes time out of their day to let Tennessee State know that they have to be careful with this GoFundMe because it might affect his eligibility. The player is in critical condition. I really don't think that the school right now is focused on his eligibility. They're trying to get him help. So when more of these stories come out and they see how corrupt the NCAA is, that's when you're going to see the bowl games go away. Because you're right, Rick, players aren't going to want to play. And you can stick with the 4 game, but your selection thing, I can give you the number one reason why you can't go to coaches. 1997, Michigan, Nebraska. And Matt's laughing because he knows how many coaches out there put Michigan less than number 2. There's only 2 teams undefeated, and a couple of them, I think Philip Fulmer came out and said he didn't vote them in the top 2, Rick, because Charles Woodson's won the Heisman over Peyton Manning. Then the other one, I think the rumor was that it was an Ohio State coach with the grudge, and when you have a slim margin of votes, then it goes the other way. So you can't trust coaches, because if it's a true playoff and there's going to be teams that are really close, they don't watch the games. You're telling me you would vote Pitt? Number 1, and let's say they beat Penn State in a year. That year they beat them a couple years ago. You know Penn State would not vote for Pitt. So you just can't do it. You got to find an unbiased source. I think they should bring the computers back. But the easier way is to just, right now, and this is what I put on Twitter. So if you go on there, it's under, I think, my regular account, but I'll put it on Southbound Sports. So follow us, S-Bound Sports, on Twitter, and I'll try to lay it out there. Because I put it out. There was one comment debunking or against my theory, and it was immediately deleted. So I assume that there are no flaws in this. You go to 16 teams because you can include the champion of every conference. Like Matt said, everyone's going to have a complaint if they're left out. But if you have the conference champion, you have the out that they don't have right now, that, hey, win your conference. If you go to 8, yeah, you can have all the Power 5 schools get in, but schools like UCF that are undefeated, if you don't put them in, what can you say to them? What can you do better? And if they go back to the weird BCS thing where they take the highest ranked non-conference or Notre Dame or BYU or whatever, that's still weird and kind of an incentive that really hurts the ACC, where Notre Dame is going to get preferential treatment just like against the Big East, and that's going to hurt the conference. That's the reason the Big East broke up. Notre Dame getting that extra in for the BCS. So you go to 16. That way you don't have UCF printed as national champions last year. Every conference champ is in. And I put out the bracket just based on last year. I think you take Saturday, you talk to the NFL. Late in December, the NFL runs Saturday games. You say, hey, NFL, we're going to do playoffs on Saturday, so just keep your games on Sunday like you do the rest of the year. And we're going to do 2 games at a time, sort of like the NCAA basketball tournament. I modeled this off the basketball tournament, which has had decades of experience to get it right. So you have 2 games at noon. Last year it would have been, and these are just kind of picked. I tried to do what the NCAA basketball tournament does, where you don't match up teams from the same conference and try to avoid repeats or whatever. So here you have 12 p.m. games last year would have been 12-1 Clemson versus Lane Kiffin's FAU, 10-3. That's an intriguing matchup. Then also at 12, you kind of stagger them so it's not exactly both starting at 12. It's like 12 and then 12:30 or something. Then you have Ohio State 11-2 versus Washington, 10-2. 3 p.m. games, Oklahoma 12-1 versus Troy, 10-2. Wisconsin 12-1 versus Miami, 10-2, which I think that game, was that an actual bowl game? I can't remember if that was last year or not. Then you go to the 6 p.m. games, Georgia 12-1 versus Toledo 11-2. Auburn 10-3 versus Penn State 10-2, which that right there satiates Penn State's beefs right now. They lost one game, they think they're out. Last year in this scenario, you would have been in. And then 9 p.m. game, Alabama 11-1 versus Boise State 10-3. Boise State, crazy upset team, who knows? And then USC 11-2 versus UCF 12-0. And I know in an audio podcast it's hard to understand as I'm just ripping down the bracket. So follow us on Twitter, SBound Sports. I'll put the bracket out. I'll look for some more breakdown. But the idea would be it's just like the NCAA basketball tournament. Every conference is included. Every team in that playoff last year had double-digit wins. So you can't tell me they don't deserve to be there. Sure, people might not tune in for Clemson versus FAU, but if you stagger it versus, that was the 1 versus 16 matchup, then you put them with the 5 versus whatever, Clemson or Ohio State at Washington, people are going to watch one of the 2 games. It's a win-win. The only reason they don't want to do it is the Power 5 conferences do not want to split the winnings with those lower schools. And if you go back to the BCS game, those lower schools, when they were included in the BCS game, I believe they have a winning record overall. Remember the Statue of Liberty, Boise State with the proposal back against Oklahoma? They win more often than not. And that's one less round in the playoffs. That way, whenever you get to the Elite Eight, you're most likely going to have one of those 4 teams or 5 teams. I think there's 5 mid-major conferences. One of those 5 teams advance. So that's it. We're going to be getting back into it. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think I already went pretty long, but that was the question. I put it out there. Think about it and send me your critiques because I would really like to see it because I don't think there is one. Let's move on to the Steelers. And I don't care if I went long on college football already because what can you say about the Steelers? The defense is so bad that Joe Flacco looks amazing out there.
He's elite.
Go ahead, Matt. What are your thoughts on the game?
Well, it was a tough one to watch. I mean, you look at what the Ravens did in the offseason and signing Brown and signing Snead, and they tooled up the wide receivers because last year they really didn't have the depth at wide receiver. They picked up, I think, the offensive weapons that they needed to have the formidable offense, and now they're seeing the results. Whereas Pittsburgh has been playing with fire, with the big money contracts, and now we have Le'Veon Bell in a second round of holdouts, and we're dealing with all the repercussions of that. Ben flirting with retirement and going back and forth. I mean, it's 2 different places, 2 different franchises with going in completely different directions. I think if potentially Colbert's job could be for as well as he's told the Steelers in the past, if he doesn't start putting together some quality players here, he could be in jeopardy.
The Le'Veon Bell thing, before I let Rick go, just so I don't forget, he's rumored to come back. I think the bye week's week 7. So he's rumored to come back around that time frame, just in time for week 8 against the Browns. So, Rick, what do you have to add about the game?
Dreadful. I mean, the Steelers' defense is just awful. I mean, we make wide receivers not good now. I mean, Joe Flacco, we made him an elite quarterback. Couldn't half decently stop the run. You can't stop the pass. I mean, there's no pass rush. Bud Dupree is the best at running up the field and missing and tackling ghosties. T.J. Watt had a great first game. He's been nowhere to be found. The cornerbacks, I don't think, could cover me with 2 injured knees and carpal tunnel wrists right now. But, I mean, it's just dreadful watching them. Watched the third quarter, went to sleep. I figured sleep is more important than a fourth quarter as Steelers. I think Keith Butler better have his resume ready because I don't see his future there. Colbert, I know, Matt, you said he's doing great at drafting. I think he's worthless at drafting. I'll say this.
He's done well in the past. That hasn't panned out recently, and I'll even go one step. I don't understand how the defensive coordinator still has his job right now. The only way that he does is because it was tied to Tomlin, and I don't know that Pittsburgh's willing to fire Tomlin.
No, I don't think they're willing to fire Tomlin because he's been there too long. They've only had 3 coaches since the 1950s. I have to hear that line over and over again. We had to hear the line that between him and Harbaugh, I think they only have 1 losing season together. I mean, but think about this too. And I know I always talk about special teams because I know Any Madden player talks about special teams too. But think about this. Listen to this one. The stat before the game. The special teams of the Steelers had as many penalties called on them as the whole entire New York Giants team. So between offense, defense, and special teams before that game started, the Giants, all those three elements combined, the special teams of the Steelers had as many flags called against them. I mean, how many times do I got to hear about pushing in the back and that I don't even know his name, the special teams coordinator. I don't care. He'll be next looking. He's chomping on gum and yelling at people and looking like this. Okay, why don't you try coaching, because nobody has an idea what they're doing out there, because we get so many blocks in the back, and last week you got a guy running the kicker and Big Ben just standing there looking like, really, this just happened? I mean, Big Ben has to have an A+++ game every time. I don't want to hear about Le'Veon Bell. The guy's worthless. He's not there. He's done. I would say trade him for a third-round pick. If you want to send him to the Jets, go ahead. I mean, he's worthless. I mean, if he shows up on the 7th game, I'll be like, you're suspended for the season. Contract detrimental to the team. Fight it with the union. I mean, he's worthless. Antonio Brown's crying too much. I will give this. Colbert can draft wide receivers, but he can't draft much else anymore. Le'Veon Bell fell to them. It was the perfect pick. Ben Roethlisberger fell to them. A bunch of teams passed up on both of those two guys. Made him look great. Watt was out there, but we took him way before he should have been drafted. Burns was a reach, too, when they drafted him. I mean, who was the Jones, the deep linebacker, was a reach. He looked bad. And the guy we passed on is now a superstar with the Ravens. It was the guy out of Alabama. I can't remember his name. Middle linebacker. That was the guy we took. It was between those two, and we took Jones, who's now, I think, unemployed. I don't think he's anywhere. But, I mean, too many misses, too many bad players. Sean Davis is awful. I mean, they were bragging up John Bostic on the game. I'm like, John Bostic's an average ball player right now, and he's getting bragged up like he's a great thing on defense.
But I wonder how much of their scheme's being taken away by the fact that Shazir's injured.
I'm tired of hearing that.
I know that they had that.
This is like the big bag of Steelers crybaby thing. Brown's not catching the ball, Bell's not there, and Shazir's not playing. Come on, people retire. Do you think the Denver Broncos are like, oh my gosh, Peyton Manning was here 3 years ago and led us to the Super Bowl?
Yes.
I mean,
because
people move on in life. People move on in life. I mean, come on. Shazir's not there. You had a free agency which just sat and did nothing, and you had a draft where you should have moved up in the draft, and you sat there and did nothing because Steelers had this idea like, the savior is going to come right to our pick. Because we had Ben Roethlisberger, savior, fell to our pick. We had, Bell fall to our pick. Come on. I'm tired of that. If we have to keep crying about Shazir, we're going to be crying about that till everything. I mean, come on.
I agree.
But I'm using that recently. He was a focal point of their defense the same way that for the longest time, Polamalu allowed Pittsburgh's defense to be as flexible as what it was because one single player literally covered the majority of the field single-handedly. So you could play exotic blitzes and do all this stuff knowing that he's going to be there to cover 2/3 of the field by himself. So when you have someone like that, or even recently with Shazir, he was allowing them to get to the perimeter and make coverages, like get out on the perimeter and cover people. It hurts when you have a player of his caliber and suddenly that's something that you're hinging your defense on and now it's not there. There's a reason. You look at it, it's a joke with Gruden and the Raiders about how he traded away Mack to the Bears. He made that move, and now he's stuck because he's not getting any pass rush. I mean, he put himself in that situation knowing he wasn't going to be able to sign Mack long term, but those players are few and far between. You have to pay up or you're going to lose them.
Yeah, I agree on the fact that his injury hurt, but I don't know if it hurt to the point where they've been inept even whenever he was kind of there. I mean, you still had a top offense while he was playing. It wasn't like any other thing really sent them down this path. They've been getting players and bringing players that don't fit their scheme. They're kind of like a hodgepodge of Dick LeBeau's defense and more of a defense that's kind of trying to be modern, but then they can't defend the spread because they don't have the guys with speed. Sure, can you mask that by throwing Shazier in there, a faster than average linebacker? Sure you can. But once he's out, it's not just because of one player. It's because you didn't bring the other guys in to run that scheme. You don't have enough speed in the secondary. And whenever you're drafting slow safeties like they did last year, what are you going to do? That doesn't help you at all. They needed to draft, if you want to run the scheme where you're going to be heavily relying on linebackers, you need to have defensive backs with speed, and they don't have it right now. You can have TJ Watt stand up and play hybrid D-end linebacker like they used to do in the 3-4. And now they're like playing a weird hybrid 4-3 or whatever defense they run out there. But you have to have the secondary speed, and they don't have it. So I don't know what they can do, and it's only going to get uglier because the offense isn't able to hold on to the ball. And I don't think it's Bell. I mean, him coming back wouldn't do anything at this point. And apparently the rumors are from, what's that guy? I don't think it was Schefter. I think it was the other guy from ESPN were saying that Steelers got no bites on him on the trading block. No one's interested. They don't want that big a hit, and they're concerned that he's not going to sign a contract next year. So Steelers definitely have leverage. The rumor is that the Steelers are going to take Bell and trade him or set him at a transition tag where they're going to be actively trying to trade him next year so that he can sign that long-term deal, unlike the franchise tag where you have to wait till after the year to negotiate. So, I mean, definitely something to watch out for. You guys have anything else you want to add?
The offensive coordinator isn't that good either because our play calling sucks too.
They're scoring points though, Rick. They're what? Over 30 every game.
14 against the Ravens.
Well, that one, but
21 against the Cleveland. I mean, you put 37 on Kansas City. You put 30 on Tampa, but Tampa's probably the second worst defense next to us in the league. They're not that good either against the pass. So
did you see what the Bears did to him?
Yeah, Trubisky had 5 touchdowns.
Trubisky, that's like the best game he's ever had in his life, even in college against like Citadel. He couldn't put together those numbers.
Yeah.
Speaking of quarterbacks, though, I will say I wanted to make sure I've made a note of it. Dude, I love what Harbaugh did with Lamar Jackson. Or no, wait. Who's their backup quarterback?
Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. When he came in and he was running that hybrid, I didn't want to make sure that I mistaked my rookie quarterback, but he was running like a hybrid Wildcat, but that dude can actually pass the ball. So he was moving the ball and Flacco was moving the ball. It's embarrassing to have that much talent on offense and at least originality. It's not like when Ricky Williams ran it or whoever ran it with the Dolphins originally. That's going to be a scary wrinkle. It actually reminds me of when Tim Tebow started, because that's how Urban Meyer won his first national championship. Tebow wasn't the starting quarterback. He was that change of pace quarterback, and that seems to be what Harbaugh's rolling out there with Jackson. And definitely scary. Definitely a little bit more than just a wrinkle. You have to spend time practicing that. So something to keep an eye on, and it takes hits down on him. Flacco can take a ton of hits. I mean, do what you got to do. But that's the one thing that I know that's a negative for the Steelers, but it was actually cool to see that work on a couple plays. So let's go on. We'll take a little break from some football action, get into Steel City update. Might as well start with baseball. Rick, you mentioned the Pirates. Who were the 2 guys that they got rid of?
Lindsley and Branson. They were worthless.
Well,
they couldn't hit with these guys. A lot of the batters underachieved with them.
Well, they were there for a couple years.
That was the same knock. That was the same knock on the guy before him, which was Jay Bell. These guys underachieved. The hitters underachieved with them. I mean, the thing is, the game is more based upon power. This year, what was it? Yankees had the most as a team in home runs, and that's the thing. That ballpark is set up. It's one of the worst when it comes to home runs. So when you watch the numbers and ballparks of home runs to left, center, left, and right, the way the ballparks dimensions are, plus, the climate and everything, it works against you. It works against you. It's not like we're Colorado. The Mets moved the fences in. The Yankees moved their fences in when they built the new ballpark and everything. That where the ball can fly more, which makes their players look great because the ball can fly. I mean, that's the thing. This ballpark is not made. It's made for a pitcher, not for a hitter. So if you ever want to hear Pirates pitching underachieve, well, if they underachieve, it's because the pitching coach and the pitchers aren't good. That ballpark is set up for pitchers to win.
Rick, I'm glad you brought that up, the power thing, because I have a way that the Pirates can end this. End the curse. Let's end it by bringing back Barry Bonds as hitting coach. He can get the guys the power that they need. Bring back Bonds.
He's in his 50s and has an artificial hip and 2 knee replacements.
Rick, really? He's not out there hitting with the team. He's teaching them all the secrets you need to be successful.
Let go with the Marlins. Let go with the Marlins, and one of his best friends was Don Mattingly, and he let him go. That tells you how bad he is.
If you listen to the media, Barry Bonds has no friends.
Well,
so I'm thinking that's a little bit of fake news that you're throwing out there.
Don Mattingly was. He brought him in to try to help them with hitting because they had another guy who could hit.
Rick,
Martinez.
Let's be honest. Pirates aren't going to win unless they start to get creative, and I'm not saying my man Barry Bonds was on PEDs, but if anyone knows how to get the power into this Pirates lineup, it's got to be him. He never tested positive.
I mean, if anything, you want to look at what Oakland's doing. Lowest payroll in the game, and they...
Oh, not the payroll argument again.
You bring up the payroll nonstop. I mean, look, payroll doesn't matter, and I proved it right.
Rick,
Detroit's spending money crazy.
Let's tell the listeners.
Now look at Oakland.
On Friday,
is spending nothing, and they're in the playoffs. Nothing. 40. It was something insane. It was like 40 or 58 million.
Hold on,
Rick.
Spending
this year.
Go
ahead.
On Friday, Rick Nutting texted me about 100 times about how the Pirates could cut some money on their salary, and I had to tell him, Rick, I don't care. Why do I care? The Pirates had $250 million in revenue. Why do I care if they spend or if they save $6 million cutting the cost of pretzels by $1.50 or adding $1.50 to the cost of pretzels? Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. Spend the money to make money. I don't care if you sign a bum for $10 million and he doesn't work out and you have to pay him. You own a Major League Baseball team. You own Seven Springs. You own whatever. You either want to win or you don't want to win. It happens with every other team. It happens with every other sport. You go out there, you hire the best coaches. Look what the Cubs did. They didn't win until they got Theo Epstein. Pay him what he wants. Get the best guys. I don't care how much it costs because it's not really, actually it is our money. The same Bob Nutting that was suing Pittsburgh for the $1.9 million stadium renovations he needed raked in $250 million in revenue. What the hell? Rick, he's going to cut.
Smart business. If you have a contract and they broke it, you sue and you win. Welcome to today's America. Today's America. You sue and you cry and you're a winner. So if you have a contract that proves, hey, they give me $2 million a year in renovations and the city hasn't paid, you might as well sue because that way you get your money, you have your contractual obligations, and that's a stand for. And again, I agree with you. Is the GM to blame? Yeah, because these contracts are bad that we're signing. We're not bringing in the right players. Clint Hurdle, I mean, here's the thing with Clint Hurdle. Until last year, Rockies made the playoffs. Before that, they were in a drought for years. Clint Hurdle was there. The Rockies management and the fans got fed up with him and his dissertations. Watch his interviews. If you have time, watch his post-game interviews. You can still catch a couple on YouTube and different things.
I don't think people have time for that.
It sounds more like a college professor than a major league manager. He's talking 6 miles over your head, nowhere to be found. You're in the parking lot. You're like, forget this. I'm going to go eat at McDonald's. I mean, it's just bad. I think he's lost the locker room in a way, and I think they need
100% he has.
Go. But I think what will help it is you get rid of some of your dead weight, and you bring up some of these minor leaguers, and maybe you get somebody who's a minor league player coach, and get somebody who maybe when your minor league coaches, bring them up too. I mean, here's a guy I like is Tom Prince on their bench coach. Tom Prince coached a lot of these guys when they were in the minor leagues at Bradenton and Altoona, won championships there. Give him the reins. Tell Clint Hurdle goodbye. Give him a Jolly Roger. Let him fly it and let him take the boat back up the, river. I mean, I don't care. And I mean, let him coach. And I think Tom Prince will do a better job because he's won with these guys in the minors.
Rick, we need to stop doing internal hires. No one cares if you win the Horseshoe Curve League. You need to get out there and bring in guys that are winning at the major league level.
But look at what Oakland did. Bob Melvin's been there for years. I mean, he has to be there at least a dozen years. But what did they do? They did hires outside.
Oakland has done nothing, Rick. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't think they've ever won anything in my lifetime.
In the playoffs, though. But look at who they hired. They're different managers. They had El Padrique, an old Pirate. There's an old Pirate reference. He used to be the AAA manager for the Yankees. They brought him in because he's an expert infield advisor. They brought Matt Williams, former Gold Glove winner, World Series winner when he was with Arizona, brought him in as an assistant coach. I mean, they also have Mark Kotze. Mark Kotze has been around for years and years and years as a player and coach, brought him into the organization. They brought in guys who know baseball, live and breathe baseball, and can coach baseball as well. That's what you need. Not a bunch of yes people, like a lot of the Pirates are. I mean, if it was up to me, Lindsley, Branson, I'd probably let Joey Cora go because he's awful on the bases. Ray Surridge, I'd probably demote him and probably make him because if he's that good, why did we only have two good pitchers in a bullpen? I mean, he did not help a lot of guys. See Glass now. I mean, Rojas, I'd probably get rid of him. He just answers a telephone. I don't know what else he does. I mean, I'd bring in a lot more of these older veteran guys who want a shot. I mean, at one time, Dave Parker wanted to be the Pirate hitting coach, and they kept telling him, no, we got better guys. I'm like, what? I mean, you have him. You have Andy Van Slyke, who's been hanging around the organization. I mean, these guys want to be a part of it, but the Pirates are pretty much telling them no. I mean, you got Doug Drabeck, who's a Double-A pitching coach, a former Cy Young winner, who's a Double-A pitching coach in Arizona. Now you're wondering why Arizona's been good lately because they send them to the, Doug Drabeck and other guys to help. I mean, that's the guys you need right there, and they're out there to get.
I'm glad you're agreeing with me, Rick. Get winners and bring them back. Barry Bonds, Van Slyke, get all those guys, bring them back, hang around the team like a big entourage.
Bobby Bonilla.
Yeah, Bobby Bonilla, get him back in there. He's part of the curse. He
doesn't have to. He makes $2 million every June 1st.
Exactly, Rick. We can have a guy hanging around the team that's getting paid by another team. That's perfect for your Bob Nutting philosophy right there.
No, he won't do it. He's an MLB union front office. So if you ever see Tony Clark, he's one of Tony Clark's boys. There's about 5 of them. Winfield, Jose Cruz Jr.
Wouldn't recognize Tony Clark, Rick. So I don't know.
I watch MLB a lot. You would recognize him. But yeah, he's there. So, and he's a professional poker player on the side. So last I knew about Bobby Bonilla.
We're going long. Let's get into hockey. Penguins start. What do you guys? We'll just do predictions this week, real quick since we're going long. Do you think the Penguins, number one, win the division against the Caps, and then number two, what round of the playoffs you think they get eliminated in? Matt?
I don't think they're going to win the division, but I do think they'll make it to at least the second round.
Oh, very conservative pick. Rick, what do you got?
Really? I think they didn't have to do a lot this offseason. I mean, they got Matt Cullen back, which is good because they needed a fourth-line center, something they were missing last year. It was 8. Now that's able, since they have 4 centers now, it's able to move Riley Shea into a wing spot because more than likely they're going to keep Broussard at the third center. So Crosby, Malkin, Broussard, Cullen. So it ends up moving him to a wing. So I think it helps them out in a way. Zach Aston-Reese goes to the minors today, so that's going to happen. So he'll report to Scranton. But I think they have depth. I think this is the Stanley. I want to say go to the Stanley Cup. I'm still going to say winner. I will not. I'll say they won't win the division, but they're going to win they're going to win it overall.
I think that they're not going to win the division. because they're going to have a little bit of like relaxed kind of, hey, let's keep guys rested up. Malkin's supposedly, he looks healthy. A lot of the guys that were banged up last year seem to be healthy. I don't think they're going to push that enough to get into, because once you get to a certain age in hockey, it doesn't matter if you win the division. Just get into the playoffs. I think they make it to the Eastern division round, win that, but I could see them losing the Stanley Cup. And it depends on the West. Can the East win it? What would that be, 4 or 5 years in a row then? That's what it comes down to. I just think that that's a ridiculous run, and getting back there would be a slap in the face of Washington, so I think they're going to get that done. And I just think they're going to fall short, and you're going to see some major moves after this year, but we'll see. Let's hope not. Maybe they can get one more before that has to happen. But we're going to do some more in-depth hockey stuff. That starts tomorrow, Rick? Or I guess today, whenever it comes out, because it's going to come out on Wednesday. This will be released, so that's the start of the year. So keep looking out for that, and we're going to get into some hockey stuff. We kind of went long on the baseball, so we'll get into that next week. I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get into the game, Rick. Whiteout, Penn State, 4th down and 5. What do you call?
A run, because you want to do what the Seattle Seahawks didn't do in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but that was what? That was on the 1 yard line.
Yeah. It was a stupid call. They were trying to keep them guessing, but they've been rushing up the center. Don't understand it. The wide receivers had a lot of drop balls in that game. Imagine if they would have caught half of them. It would have helped them out a lot.
Well, that one guy, I think that's why they went with the run. I don't know the guy's name, Johnson or something, on the outside. He dropped like 4 balls, and he was getting open, and I think that was the guy Ohio State was going to leave in one-on-one coverage and kind of daring you to go ahead and drop that. The play design was awful. Matt, what are your thoughts as a head coach? What would you have ran there?
Well, we did run in a similar situation. It was a 4th and long, and we did run the ball where most logic says to throw it. I think what you got to do in that type of situation, you think, who are your playmakers and how do you get the ball in their hands? And in that situation, I know hindsight's always going to be 20/20, but you pick up one block on the edge and he walks in the end zone on that run. No one's second guessing that call. It's a brilliant move, but because it didn't pan out, it's easy to sit back and say, oh, well, geez, you should have threw the ball. It was 4th down. What were you thinking? It can go either way.
Go ahead.
Not mad. I'm not mad, and I don't think that it was as dumb of a call as some people were making it out to be, but I think the execution of it was poor.
I'll say this. Penn State was a lot closer to Ohio State than I thought. Going into the game, I've been watching the talent composite. I actually put it out on Southbound Sports before the show tonight. I did a couple Penn State-related tweets. Penn State now has a losing record in whiteout games, which should just be called the Penn State-Michigan game, or the Ohio State-Michigan game, because 10 of the 15 have been against either Ohio State or Michigan. They have a losing record in those games now. And overall, I think they're split 5-5 against Ohio State and Michigan combined. Lost one to Alabama. I think they beat like Illinois or someone back in the day, but it's all on the tweet I sent out. And then their talent came out because they didn't have Penn State updated. 24/7 didn't have the full Penn State roster until I think yesterday, or when did I send that to you guys? I think it was after the game. And Penn State's 12th. Very, very close to Michigan. I think they're 3 blue chip recruits behind. I might be off by 1. It's like 2 or 3, a handful. And then together, they are about 15 to 20 behind Ohio State. That's the gap between Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, that second level. Michigan, I think, is sitting right now at 8, and Penn State's at 12th in overall talent on the roster. You need top 10 to win the national championship. Every national championship team has had top 10 talent. Penn State is so close. Last year, I think they were in the 20s. So the job that Franklin has done recruiting is unreal. In such a short time, to come back from sanctions NCAA sanctions and scholarship production to get Penn State at number 12 is ridiculous. I don't even know what to say in terms of his recruiting. Now, when you're there were a couple things. It wasn't just the run that stuck out to me. I think he should have went for 2 early, and that would have helped set the tone. They ended up winning by 1. If you go by 2, is that a tie game? I don't know. So there were a couple other plays that were weird. The run, I didn't really it really didn't shock me. I think they were used to the Saquon Barkley runs, where even if that collapsed, he would have still got close to that first down marker. And I think that when you come from such a generational talent as having Saquon Barkley, it's tough to replace that. It's tough to replace that. You can pin your ears back now. And I don't know. I don't think the season's over. Like, I know we went long on the mailbag because a lot of people, I know a lot of Penn State alums, talked to one of them that was at the game. Stadium was electric. They loved it. Everything except for the last 4 minutes. They told me you could feel the game fall apart in the last 4 minutes inside the stadium. It was a collapse. And stadium gets quiet, and you can feel that when Penn State needs it. They don't have the stadium behind them. Power of the whiteout. So, anything else you guys want to add about that game? Rick, how do you feel?
The play call was bad. There was one time where they went for it earlier in the game on 4th down instead of doing the field goal. And I said,
the field goal, you always take the points.
And he didn't take the points. That was the problem. If he would have taken the points.
Is the kicker bad?
The kickers, he was what, 1 for 4 or 2 for 4?
Because it seems like he didn't trust him.
He didn't trust him because he was 1 for 2 in that game. So the problem is if he would have let him kick that one and he would have made it, that wouldn't have been tough. That was like in the second quarter.
Yeah, so I know it was early.
There. He missed one. Ohio State's guy missed one too. So both kickers missed a field goal in the game. So you could say, well, what if Penn State would have made it? Well, what if Ohio State would have made it? Then we're still lose by 1. But if you would have let them kick that one, that's the problem. They don't have that strong kicker. And the Ohio State punter, I'm going to give him credit too. Dude was good. Dude was really good. They didn't get a good shot at returning anything, and he was always kicking far. So kudos to him. That was really the thing. Ohio State had better field position. Ohio State shot themselves in the foot. One thing I did not understand is if you get 3 personal fouls on one play and Penn State gets 1, it's a dead even. Don't understand that rule. I think that one needs to be looked at the end of the year. So what I came up was if you're going to beat up a guy, you might as well have 6 guys beat up on him instead of 1 because it's still going to be the 15 yards, no matter if it's 1 guy or 3 guys throwing punches, it's going to be, it doesn't matter. That was a weird one, but I did look up the rule and that's correct. So weird rule though.
That's the Miami Hurricane rule. You can have as many guys fight as possible, but only 1 can get penalized. And then, speaking with that, the refs were awful. What was the one spot? I had it written down where they did like an Urban Meyer. They looked at him on the sideline and they were like, hey, do you want us to measure this? No. And they just moved the ball up magically 1 yard and gave Ohio State the first down. And I was like, what is going on? When he was stopped short, I don't even remember what the situation was. He was stopped short. They moved the ball up after they did like a little conference, and then they called for a first down. Didn't measure anything. They just moved the chains. And I don't want to single out that the game was fixed because I'm going to bring in the Michigan game. That was one of mine. I had a couple different ones, and it's all across college football. And I've already proposed the playoffs. I had a proposal here that I was going to bring in that the NFL should just donate some of their money to help improve the game by donating money specifically for NCAA to have league-wide refs. Stop with the conference refs. They're bad. Michigan running back Karan Higdon it was a zone read. Shea Patterson pulled the ball, didn't hand it off, and the linebacker from Northwestern tackled the Michigan running back, and they called holding on the running back. They said because he was tackled. And Harbaugh brought it up in his post-press conference, which, I mean, I'm sure he's fined. He said he asked 2 different officials or whatever for clarification, and they both said it was because he was tackled holding on him. Ridiculous. How can you even say that it was holding when the other guy tackles you? Unbelievable. And then after the game, they were like, yeah, that was probably the wrong call. Really? It was a first down. It was a third down. The holding brought them back, and they didn't convert and had to punt. And it was a game they were behind Northwestern. Could have swung the game. Basically could have ended if Northwestern would have scored one more time. Time would have ran out. And then you have the Penn State game. Some weird, they don't know how to spot the ball. And then going into the ACC, not yet, but at the end of the Clemson game, Syracuse gets the ball. There's like a minute left. Very first play after the kickoff. The quarterback scrambles almost up to around midfield. Their guard, who was it? Dexter Lawrence, the big Clemson defensive tackle. He got pancaked. And guess what? Flags come out. I'm thinking, all right, he held him and threw him down. Nope. Unnecessary roughness. Unnecessary roughness for pancaking a guy on defense. You can't tell me that doesn't feel like a rigged call. And I'm going to put some of these videos out. I sent them to the guy so that I know I had them. And I'll be putting them out over the next day or two on the Southbound Sports, on the Twitter. You can check that out, S-Bound Sports. But I don't even know what to say. I think it's not really incompetence. I don't think it's fixing games. I just think the refs, I think it's geared towards more home teams because they get intimidated. You're in the whiteout. It's loud. You're a little flustered. You have Urban Meyer yelling at you. And you're like, you know what? Maybe that was a bad spot here. Or you don't know what's going on. And Clemson's rocking. You see the best guy on their defensive line get slammed on the ground. So you think that it must have been a punch or something. And you throw a flag. And then you're like, well, I already threw it. I can't not call it. I just don't know. So that's what stood out to me in the Big Ten. And I'll call out the Big Ten more than other conferences. The Big Ten, their officials are bad. And I think it's just because they are greedy and they don't want to pay. You don't want to pay for good guys. I don't even know what to tell you. So, getting into the ACC, I don't have anything else in the Big Ten. Matt, what do you got for the ACC? Florida State pulled out a what?
Florida State
a squeaker?
Pulls out the win versus Louisville. Wouldn't even say squeaker. I mean, it was poor game management by Louisville. Petrino calls a pass. Westbrook picks it off, sets up the drive, and they score the go-ahead touchdown. Unbelievable play. It seems like the players are playing more confidently, and I don't know if a big part of that is because of DeAndre Francois missing out all spring with his knee injury, that now like we're so far into the season that he's feeling more comfortable or confident in the play call and adjusting stuff, different from the schemes that they ran last year under Jimbo Fisher. But the offense looks much better. The defense, for as many issues as they've had, I think they're playing really good football. So I think they're only trending upward from here. The thing with the ACC that really stood out to me was all the coverage over the quarterback issues at Clemson. And
that's where I'm going. That's where I wanted to go after this. So go ahead, give your thoughts on it.
I think here's one of those examples where, as a coach, I have a hard time swallowing this new concept where players essentially take their ball and go home. Well, the coach is out to get me, so I'm not playing anymore. If he's not going to name me the starter, I'm going to transfer out. And I understand, like, there is a mindset and an attitude of get yours while you can. And Clemson has two quality quarterbacks. and I mean, either one of them could potentially be a starter in a number of programs. And what ends up hurting them is their quarterback gets hurt, and the other one says he's opting to transfer out and leave the program, and now they're stuck in a bad spot.
Yeah, I had some stats on this, and this can kind of be my final bell because I don't have anything else other than this, so I'm glad you brought it up, Matt. There were, over the past however many years, there were, 16 five-star quarterbacks? 62% of them, 62.5%, so basically 63% of them, transferred. And I think what happens is you have a coach promise these high-profile recruits, and this isn't even the one for Clemson. Clemson's issue started last year. They had five-star recruit Hunter Johnson on the roster, and he gets beat out by Kelly Bryant. I think they both played a little bit, and decides, you know what? I don't want to share time whenever Clemson's bringing in another five-star recruit, Taylor Lawrence. I just don't want to. I'm going to transfer to Northwestern. Great education. I mean, you could say that's a big step up from Clemson's education if you're going by the News and World Report. Why not? Why not go to a school that you're going to get your degree? You're a five-star recruit. You're most likely going to play. I don't know if Hunter Johnson has to sit out this year, but he was not the quarterback for Northwestern whenever Michigan played them on Saturday. So you're having guys transfer teams, and Michigan has another one, Shea Patterson. Ole Miss transfer. Now, that was a little bit different situation because he was only able to transfer due to the Hugh Freeze prostitute call or whatever he was doing. So he got fired and they added a bowl ban. But the rest of these, I mean, let's go. The guys that actually stayed, it's easier just to go through the five stars that stayed. Braxton Miller, Ohio State. He was there for 18 years. Jameis Winston, Florida State, won a national championship. Let's go. Christian Hackenberg, Penn State. Almost transferred due to the sanctions, didn't he? He was one of the ones that was close to, but he ended up sticking it out. Josh Rosen, UCLA, high draft pick in the NFL draft. And then last year, the new one, Stanford, Davis Miller, and the Alabama guy, Tua, however you pronounce that name. And that's it. The only five-star quarterbacks that have stuck with their team. It's outrageous. And Clemson kind of did it to themselves. But what is Dabo Swinney supposed to do? You can't bring in five-star quarterback after five-star quarterback and not expect some transition. I don't think it's really on him. Could he have handled it better in season? Yes, I think he could have. Look at what Nick Saban's doing with Tua and Jalen Hurts. Yeah, Hurts. So he's bouncing it out. There were rumors, and we talked about it on the show, that he might only play the 4 games so that he would transfer without having to sit out a year. And he played the 5th game over the weekend. So that's off the table. So now he's either stuck with Alabama or he transfers and redshirts that year. And at this point, I don't know if he has to ask for a 5th year or not. But what do? You have to get the guys and keep them on the roster. And that's another thing. Even bringing in a 5-star, Michigan brought in Shea Patterson. Brandon Peters is still on the roster. Last year's quarterback, he came in after John O'Corn. He's going to be, or he is a junior, or he's going to be a junior. I think he might be a sophomore. I think he's a junior this year. So he's basically losing a year. And if Shea doesn't go to the NFL, what is he going to do? Is he going to transfer after this year? I think you're going to see more and more people transfer. And if the NCAA does away with the transfer rule, which I don't think they ruled on that yet, where you don't have to sit out a year, you will see a ton more transfers. It will be like an open season for teams that might be right there, really close, like the Northwesterns that get 8 wins and say, you know what, we're a quarterback away, or we're this position away, we're a wide receiver away. Let's bring someone in. So I don't know. And as a coach, I don't know how you handle it. Matt, do you have anything else you want to add from a coaching perspective?
I just wonder how guys like Saban, like what does that meeting room look like where he's talking to both of those guys, and to have the talent that he has continuously coming in and being able to maintain some sense of consistency. Because I would think that in most programs, when you have 2 guys that could potentially divide your locker room, especially when you have the styles that they have are so much different. Where you have Tua that's a better thrower, and Hurts who's a better runner, and you can have guys that are on either side of the aisle saying, This is what we need to do as far as our offense, and somehow he manages to make it work, and not only make it work, but they're blowing teams out. There's not even a close game with the way that they're playing right now. So I think, to me, that's the thing that I find interesting. And when you look, I think you're going to see this trend that's happening at Clemson happen more often, because you have the early signing period, so you have these guys that are willing to commit early. Or teams that are saying, if you don't commit early, there's a chance that offer may not be there, come National Signing Day. That I think could put some pressure on teams. That if you already know, like Alabama may struggle to sign a quarterback in the next 2 cycles, knowing that you have Hurts and Tua there.
Well, I'll say, I'm going to add on to that. You're going to have to do 2 things. You're going to have to either space out your quarterbacks, because I'm looking at Ohio State right now. They have redshirt sophomore Dwayne Haskins, and they have redshirt freshman Tate Martell. So Tate Martell's only a year behind him. He's either going to have to wait for 3 years. For 3 years he'll play behind Haskins, or hope that he goes pro after 2. And then he'll get his junior, senior year, where you're almost going to see teams recruit a quarterback every other cycle. But that's so hard, or you bring in 2 at the same time. I can go back to the Michigan thing with Peters. He hasn't even been the backup this year. Christian McCaffrey's brother, Dylan McCaffrey, has been the backup quarterback for Michigan, and he's a sophomore. So if Shea Patterson, even if he goes to the NFL, there's still a chance Peters could transfer, and Harbaugh has to deal with the same thing. And on the other hand, what if you're Penn State? You have a quarterback that's been the clear guy for a couple years now. What happens whenever you're trying to replace him? As a coach, if you bring in 2 guys, you're almost setting it up for one guy to be battling there for 2 years, learning from Trace McSorley. All right, whenever he's done, I think he's a senior this year, so he's done at the end of the year. How is Franklin going to handle that? It's going to be very interesting to watch these coaches, because now they have to balance ego, social media, and the ever-present family that's there saying, hey, bro, why aren't you playing? Coach is doing you wrong. And then coaches has to hammer this out, and then random people on the internet messaging you. So those are the 3 teams that I would watch. If you want to keep an eye on this, just in the Big Ten. Michigan next year, what happens? Penn State when McSorley's gone. And what happens with Haskins and Tate Martell? Is Tate Martell going to sit and be the clear number 2 for the next couple of years? So that's my recommendation. If you're interested in the quarterback thing that's going on in Clemson, you're going to see 3 different situations and how it's handled with these new rules coming in. Rick, we'll kick it off for you for the final bell. You got anything to close it out this week?
Nothing really. Major League Baseball playoffs is underway, so that's exactly what I'll be doing as soon as this is over. So definitely a good time of the year with baseball beginning. And if you like football, I recommend it. Just don't watch the Steelers. Don't recommend that.
Well, they're playing the Falcons, 2 underachieving teams on, was that Sunday?
Yeah.
So one of them has to win, which I will say off topic here. I don't know how the Falcons can be stopped with Ridley, Sanu, and Julio Jones. Their offense is scary, and yet their defense is so bad. They're like the NFC version of the Steelers. Just they don't have a running game balance. It's just more of all passing game. But their offense is so deadly. Sanu caught the 1 touchdown. He's just laughing because he knew that if you're doubling Ridley was wide open for one of their touchdowns. I'm like, how can you leave him open? But then you have to double Julio Jones. It's a nightmare. But the defense is so bad, it doesn't matter how many points you score. So, Matt, what do you got for the final bell?
Dogs are at home this week. Come out, support the Bulldogs, support breast cancer awareness. Come out, pink out, support the dogs.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I don't have anything else. I pretty much threw out my couple tidbits throughout the show. 16-team playoff. NFL should donate their refs to the NCAA or donate money for them to hire refs and then bring them up to the majors, the NFL. And you'll see a lot more people. If they can handle the environment in like a MAC conference, then bring them up to one of the Power 5 conferences. And once they're ready there, bring them up to the NFL. Get it done. Very simple. That way you can kind of see how the refs are doing. You can promote them, demote them to different conferences based on their performance. Very easy. So that's it. I've been putting stuff on Twitter. I know I got to get better at putting extra stuff up as we talk about on the show. So I'll be trying to be a little bit more active as we fill out our content during the football seasons. Follow us, S-Bound Sports, Facebook and Instagram, Southbound Sports. Same with YouTube. We put these shows up on YouTube. And if not, subscribe on iTunes. Tell your friends. Make sure you download the show. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.